wish Prerna was here to talk to all of you herself, but since she has been struck by COVID and her voice has gone, she requested me to read this message. I remember how, when I was a young kid, my father used to be pretty busy at work. You know those forms we sometimes have to fill out where they ask what work your parents do? I never used to be really clear on what dad did at work. It just sounded boring and strange to me. Being a corporate employee didn't exactly sound glamorous to me. Some of my friends had parents who were pilots or doctors, all of which sounded way more interesting. Never did I imagine that what my dad did at work required any real skill or learning. At one point, I slowly started to realize that maybe my dad was a much more amazing person than I had originally seen him as. The more I met people who he worked with who would praise him, the more confused I became. Were they talking about the same goofy dad who I would make fun of for his off tune singing? The dissonance was pretty strong. Naturally, though, as I grew up and matured in my thoughts, I slowly came to the realization that everything he said seemed so much smarter than what I heard from others. He always made sense. The level of obvious common sense and logic with which he seemed to speak, no matter what the topic may be, was almost intimidating. How was he doing that? How could he be able to view the same problem that I was viewing, but come out with such a simple and straightforward solution? It was perhaps when I joined college that I first realized how unique the way Dad thought and spoke was. As I applied principles that I had learned from him while addressing situations around me at college, I realized what an advantage that gave me in my own growth as a person. This, I feel, was what made my father so special. The sheer clarity in his observations and his ability to communicate his thought process in the simplest, most obvious words. No matter who the audience may be, he would be able to ensure they understood where he was coming from. This clarity he had allowed him to view everything in a simpler, more structured manner. Whether it be his personal life, his golf skills, his day to day work, or his long term vision, he was able to apply that structure to all of it. That, coupled with his strong determination and level of self discipline, turned him into a term that I fondly gave him, the self improvement monster. Dad would never stop making self improvement plans. Some of the fun ones were watching him build a week wise plan for how to get better at golf. He would break everything down to the root cause, for example. The way I am holding the golf club is wrong, so I have to address that before everything else. Then he would spend the next 5 days practicing nothing but his grip. It's no surprise then that he also applied all of this to his career. I think it's fairly clear that he was largely successful at it too. But my dad was the type of person who would use every opportunity to help others learn how to improve themselves too. He noticed that I lacked confidence in answering questions because I didn't want to get anything wrong. So every night at the dinner table, he would spend 30 minutes quizzing me on logic based questions until I broke my habit. That same father would never be satisfied with just helping himself grow and improve. No, he wanted to help as many people as he possibly could. And certainly, through his career, he had mentored several people and provided support to people around him wherever he could. But he didn't feel like he was making the most of his abilities in this area. He has touched on a concept in his first book, Catalyst, the concept of return on investment, or ROI. People around you and society in general invest in you and your growth through the majority of your life. The idea of giving back to society in some significant way is the return on that investment. Each person has a different skill, and the way through which we choose to give back is different for all of us. We could all say donate to charity, but are we all creating the maximum possible impact simply through that? Probably not. Dad believed that the way he could maximize his own ROI to society was to pass on everything he learned and wanted to teach to as many people as possible. This was why he started writing his books. They have been a work of passion for him, with no expectations of gains from them. He simply wanted to ensure that in some way he was able to communicate his learnings and experiences to people he may not even have met in person. He had originally planned to write several more after Catalyst, and we have a wall in our house with empty frames that he had intended to fill with photos of his future book covers. But as most of you know now, he passed away a little over a year ago due to cancer. That vision may not come true, but in his final few months, he left behind for all of us the draft of his final book, Transform. Transform deals with something that I feel most people don't address in a structured manner, the concept of people management. This is one of those things that, as a recent MBA grad myself, I can say was never really broken down into a 5-step to do list. We all know it's important, but I think most of us tend to focus on more functional skills by default because it's just way easier to measure whether you've learned them. We all have this vague image in our heads of the kind of leader we one day dream of being. But I guess very few of us would have sat down and outlined our game plan for reaching there. What are the most important things we need to focus on? What 5 activities should we practice on a daily basis to improve? How can we demonstrate our skills best to those around us? Transform addresses exactly that, the simple, practical breaking down of how to become a good manager and a good leader, because you can never become one without the other. Overall, Dad's books have always attempted to turn complex, unstructured thoughts into actionable habits you can build. My hope for those who read this book would be to step away with a goal for where you want to reach and a plan for how to get there.